The Last of Us is one of the most popular video game franchises of the past decade, largely praised for its realistic characters and amazing storytelling. This is why it comes as no surprise that the game is being adapted into an HBO TV series starring Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey. Fans of the game series are likely wondering, will the series be covering the story of both games or just the first? Find out how the show may be planning on bridging the plots between the two games and why this ultimately may not be the best idea. Moving on, we'll be talking about why we think The Last of Us will be the next step for video game adaptations. Also, hear what we expect the on-screen relationship between Joel and Ellie to be like, and hear what Pedro Pascal had to say about his role as Joel. First off, will The Last of Us series be focusing on both games or just the first? With many fans of the series seeing both games as a continuing story, many are likely wondering whether both games will be covered in the series. While the second game is somewhat controversial amongst fans, many would agree that its story creates a natural progression in the arc of the characters. With that being said, for the time being, it appears the show has only confirmed that they will be covering the first game in the series. All things considered, this makes a lot of sense. The first game in the series follows Joel and Ellie, who set out to cross the United States amid a zombie-like pandemic. The first game, by nature, contains its own self-contained story and is not dependent on the events in the second game whatsoever. Ultimately, with showrunners not having any confirmation on how the show will perform, it makes sense they would only begin by committing to a single season. With all the in-depth storytelling contained within the first game, the producers of the show will already have their work cut out for them in translating it without having to worry about the second game's plot. Although fans can only expect story elements from the first game in the first season, this doesn't mean showrunners will refrain from giving fans clues about the plot developments in future seasons. Who's one major character we think they could introduce in Season 1 to set up the following season? So, how could showrunners bridge the gap between the first game and the second? With The Last of Us video games, the writers had no idea they would make a second game at the time of writing the first. Because of this, there wasn't much connection between the two games, and The Last of Us Part 2 essentially started a brand new story from scratch. Because showrunners already have source material waiting for them, should they choose to make a second season, it would make sense to plant a couple of seeds in the first season to tie the two plots together. The plot of the second game revolves largely around the relationship between Abby and Ellie. Toward the end of the game, Joel kills a group of fireflies to save Ellie. Abby is a character revealed in the second game, whose father was killed by Joel in this climactic battle. This creates painful symmetry between the death of Joel's daughter at the start of the first game when connected with the death of Abby's father at the beginning of the second. The second game then largely revolves around Abby attempting to get revenge on Ellie for the death of her father, and Ellie retaliating in turn. While there is no mention of Abby in the first game, having the second game's plot already established could lead to an interesting opportunity. After Joel kills the fireflies, the show could feature a subtle moment where Abby discovers her father dead at the hands of Joel. This would create a perfect entry point to Season 2 and create a bridge between the two largely separate plot lines. With that being said, showrunners may not decide to do anything like this, and here's why that may be for the best. With that being said, why isn't this the best idea? Although showing Abby discovering the death of her father would be an interesting bridge between plots, there is a strong argument for why this doesn't fit with the themes of morality explored in the first game. In the first game, the purpose of Joel killing the fireflies is entirely to save Ellie. Although we know innocent people are being killed, the sacrifice Joel makes to save Ellie becomes a beautiful moment. This scene challenges its viewers with a very morally gray situation, which is one of the things that makes The Last of Us such a great story. In introducing the storyline with Abby later, viewers will have the chance to experience the same plot developments as the game and focus on Joel's sacrifice to save Ellie instead of the death of Abby's father. By saving this reveal for later, it will likely have significantly more impact on the viewer. This is because they will have already made their minds up about the moral implications of what Joel did before it is revealed that Abby lost her father in the process. This will likely make the character of Abby much more complex should the show go on to a second season. Especially with the show not having its second season confirmed yet, it's probably best not to muddy the waters by distracting from Joel and Ellie's relationship. Moving on, here's why we think The Last of Us will be the next step for video game adaptations. Video game adaptations into films and movies have been around for a long time. Often, these have been released with relatively weak results. Fans only need to think back back to the Mortal Kombat movies, or even the 1993 film adaptation of Super Mario Bros. Film to remember the state of what video game movies used to be like. With that being said, it appears The Last of Us will be able to break through these boundaries and give fans one of the best video game adaptations of all time. This comes in the wake of Netflix's Arcane, which is based on League of Legends, winning an Emmy for Outstanding Animated Program. This moment signaled a shift in the video game adaptation world and showed that just because something is based on a game doesn't mean it can't be well conceived as well. The reason we see The Last of Us truly beginning a new era of video game adaptations is because of its unbelievable story. Many fans of the game have praised The Last of Us for containing one of the best and most nuanced stories a video game has ever had. This will make it significantly easier to turn into a genuinely engaging TV show because the plot is already fully formed. Compared to Mortal Kombat or Super Mario Bros., you can see how this is not always the case. The reason The Last of Us will mark a step forward for video game adaptations is because it marked a step forward for video games as a whole. One of the things that made the game's story so special was the relationship between Joel and Ellie. Hear what Pedro Pascal and other stars had to say about his relationship with his co-star, as well as his thoughts on the upcoming series. Finally, what did the stars of the show have to say about the upcoming series? With the relationship between Joel and Ellie being the driving force behind much of The Last of Us, the genuine on-screen chemistry between actors is key to capturing this dynamic. Luckily for fans of the show, this seems to be the case. It was recently revealed that after filming, Pascal wrote his co-star Bella Ramsey a tender note explaining how special working on the show was for him. Right off the bat, this shows that the two actors formed a bond on the show that will likely translate to powerful and heartfelt moments on screen. Although fans of the game have been worried that the show will not remain entirely faithful to the source material, this news should allow them to breathe a sigh of relief, because Joel and Ellie's relationship is the heart and soul of the story, regardless of if the show's plot strays from the source material. Having genuine chemistry between the actors will go a long way in making up for it. Regardless of how the final product is received, it appears the cast of the show is incredibly pleased with how it turned out. One of the other actors on the show, Murray Bartlett, has had high praise for one specific episode of the show. He would go on record saying that despite all the zombies and the violence, the show has some very genuinely tender moments. He said, "The scripts that I had to work with, one particular script is one of the best hours of television I've ever read. It's beautiful, it's beautifully written." If Bartlett's praise is any indication, fans are in for a treat when the series gets released. Are you excited about The Last of Us series? Are you a big fan of the games? What are your thoughts on showrunners bridging the gap between the first and second game stories? Do you think Abby should be included in the first season? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you next time.